Okay students, this is the January 2013 F581 paper. The case study is looking at the UK housing crisis in numbers. So you know it's the UK housing market. It starts with saying the UK is facing a severe housing shortage. So you know that demand is greater than supply in this market. A growing population, so you've got a factor that affects demand, combined with a rise in the number of households, because more people are living alone and more people have second homes. So there is kind of a preference change, that people are demanding houses differently than they have in the past, has meant that the UK is unable to build houses at the same rate. Now the word rate is important because it's meaning percentage change year on year, so that this is kind of not just a one-off, it's a yearly thing, which they are needed. The government had estimated that the UK requires 240,000, so roughly 250,000 houses to be built every year to meet growing demand, and the current rate is only 125,000. So nearly about double the demand than there is for the supply. As a result, the average price of new houses may rise and people on low incomes may struggle to buy. So demand greater than supply, shortages will equal price rises. It's key here that it says that people on low incomes may struggle, as these may be a third party or someone that we want to satisfy later on. You've got a table here with percentage changes in price, percentage changes in quantity supplied, so we know there'll be a question on price elasticity of supply. Going down after the table, we've got, in response to this problem, the government has attempted to increase the supply of new houses by relaxing planning regulations. So we've got a bit of deregulation here as a government intervention in order to allow increased number of houses to be built. So deregulation to increase supply, and subsidising the building of affordable homes. Now the word affordable is key, because relaxing the planning regulations will affect all houses. But here, the subsidising is just for affordable houses, which links back to those people on low incomes earlier on. In 2007, the government has made a commitment to ensure that 3 million houses will be built by 2020. Quite a significant time period, but house building takes time. Where and how these new houses should be provided is causing problems. One suggestion is that new housing should be built in major developments on the edge of existing towns or villages, so kind of new developments. These sustainable urban extensions, or SUEs, would have their own schools, shops, health and community facilities. This would therefore put less pressure on existing services than building lots of smaller housing estates. These SUEs would also generate employment, we've got a positive externality there, and improve infrastructure in the area, again another positive externality. It's kind of an external economy of scale for businesses. Residents close to many of the proposed sites disagree, so we've got a third party here. They believe that such substantial developments would destroy the countryside, so you've got blight or visual intrusion, and reduce the value of existing houses. An alternative to the building of new houses is to provide government grants to encourage renovation, so taking old properties and improving them, and the use of existing empty properties. In September 2010, the Homes and Communities Agency published data which estimated that there were 734,000 such vacant houses in the UK. So there's a large amount of vacant houses that could increase or meet the demand through increased supply. Houses left empty are often the target for vandalism and litter. It has been argued that on average empty houses need only £10,000 of investment to repair them for reoccupation, compared with 90,000 to build new affordable homes. So you've got a significant bit of VO2 there, that you can build or renovate 9 houses for the cost there is to build one new affordable home. And the last sentence says, with limited government finance available, there is a difficult choice between funding the building of new houses and the renovation of old houses. So we can kind of guess there's going to be some opportunity cost here between the two, but also we've got the base economic problem because we've got limited government resources there. So now if we have a look at the first question, we have a question which says, using the information provided in the case study, explain how the economic problem, or basic economic problem, can be applied to the market for new houses. So we've got the market, and we've got the key term there. So the definition for the basic economic problem is going to be scarce resources, and unlimited wants and needs. It just mentioned that the scarce resources are factors of production to build, and also the building site. So we can talk about maybe capital, but also land in the form of places to build houses. In terms of wants and needs, you have a house in itself is kind of a need for most people, but you could potentially talk about more luxury accommodation as being a want, or a second home, maybe specifically, would be a good example of a want rather than a need. The second question is define opportunity cost. So again, the cost of, really important we use the word cost of, the next best alternative, and the other key word is foregone. Now we've just been asked to define opportunity cost, but now we've got using a production possibility curve, or PPF, diagram, illustrate and explain. So we're going to draw it and then explain it, the opportunity cost described in the case study. Now that line 28 to 29 was the government and the option between renovating and new homes. And what you can talk about is the scarce resource. So quantity one. If the government decides to renovate more new homes, there will be less money available for them to build new dwellings. So what you can say is that based on the scarce resources of government revenue, the opportunity cost of an increase in supply of renovated is the number of new homes foregone. Now to make that even better, what you want to do is for the opportunity cost of the increase in supply of renovated homes, refer to the quantity Q1 to Q2, and even better if on the new houses we'll use Q3 to Q4, and the number of new houses foregone Q3 to Q4. Obviously write this up as a full question, I'm just doing it in note form to go through it quickly. Okay, the next question links into the supply and demand topics. So the question here, what is meant by a market? It's a place where buyers and sellers meet to exchange goods and services. And you could say that the supply and demand of those services determines the equilibrium price and quantity. Then we've got a section here which is saying state and explain two likely determinants. So two, and there's a 1 and a 2 there to kind of give you a hint that they want at least two answers. Determinants of, or factors affecting of an increase in the demand for houses in the UK. So two separate ones that were mentioned. One was an increase in population, and one was a change in preferences. Now the increase in population, you can kind of just talk about that there'll be an increase in number of families who would be able to, or be willing and able, through kind of new jobs and incomes, to buy houses. This will increase the demand. In terms of a change in preferences, you can talk about probably better than preferences. I think a rise in incomes would be a nice one to talk about in terms of second homes, give us more economic analysis. So a rise in incomes or disposable incomes would increase the demand for second homes, as second homes are a luxury good and therefore are responsive to rises in income. I think that would be a higher quality answer for 6 marks. The next question we've got, we need to be really careful with, because this says using demand and supply. So we're going to draw a diagram, comment, and this is key because comment means that we're going to have 2 sides. Again, I'm drawing this line just for the plan, don't put the line in your actual answer. On the likely impact, so again the EO3 is the likely impact on the market for new houses of relaxing planning regulations. So deregulation is the one side, what should happen to the market, and on the other side is that that won't happen. So I suppose an unlikely. Now what should happen, or what is likely, is supply will rise. So we've got to think of reasons why supply might not rise, or might not rise to the same extent, or that the change in price and quantity that we think are going to happen don't happen. Now, so if we deregulate the market, what we're going to have is an initial change which will bring down price as supply increases and increase quantity. So we want to explain that it reduces production costs of businesses. The reduction in production costs causes supply to rise. This causes the quantity demanded to rise, but it also brings down the price in the market. The reason why that might be unlikely in terms of price is if this means that it leads to a huge increase in demand. So that demand is increasing at the same time, maybe because of those factors affecting demand such as preferences or incomes. And if the rise in demand is greater than the rise in supply, then we're going to have price rises within this market. And also kind of a significant increase in quantity. Okay. Another way to do this would be potentially to draw an inelastic demand graph, either separately or you could draw it on the same graph, and talk about that it may cause a much larger fall in price but only a small increase in quantity if the market for houses was price inelastic or demand inelastic. 6 mark question. We're going to need at least a couple of points on the reason why it won't, or is the unlikely effects, to get those 6 marks. Okay, now this is the challenging question on the paper around price elasticity of supply. So first of all, it says define the term price elasticity of supply. So percentage change in quantity supplied over percentage change in price. The next question, using information in figure 1, comment on the significance, and notice that the word business isn't here, so just the significance of price elasticity of supply between 2006-2010 on the market for new homes. So it's not really talking about the business, it's talking about the market. Your answer must include calculations of PAS. So initially, we'd put the data into the table and we'd calculate this in terms of the percentage changes in quantity supplied over the percentage changes in price. 3.6 over 4.8 is going to give us 0.75. So this will be interpreted as inelastic or unresponsive. Then we've got 2, 0.78, 2.18 and 1.9. And negative because we've got a 14.5% decrease in supply at the same time as a 7.4 increase in price. So we've got an inelastic, elastic, inelastic, elastic, elastic. Okay. Now there's a mixed bag of answers here. So once we've done the interpretation, we're then left with about 4 marks. And the easiest way to do a bit of evaluation around this is talk about that they are only the figures may be inaccurate, because at the end here you have a negative, which price elasticity of demand should be negative, price elasticity of supply should be positive. So you could talk about 2010 and question the data, because it should be positive. And that's one way. The other way to look at it is that potentially as the prices are rising, so a high of 4.8, then it's inelastic. There's a slowdown, so it's going from 4.8 price rise to 1.2, and at that point it starts becoming more elastic. There's a slowdown even further and prices go negative, but within this year again it's inelastic, but it becomes very elastic when the price starts to fall significantly. So you could look at what you might know about the year here. There's not kind of a, you could say that the elasticities are unstable over time. It tends to be inelastic at the start, and then it becomes very elastic very quickly. But you could also look at the other things we can say about this market is that supply tends to be in the short term inelastic and in the longer term elastic. So we might talk about that during this period was the financial crisis, and as prices fell significantly here, it was easier for the business to reduce supply, so it became very elastic, and that's the most elastic in the year. So you could say that essentially it could be most elastic when they are trying to reduce supply in the market. However, on the years where the prices are rising, it might be harder because of regulations and things like that. You could also maybe talk that maybe in the future when deregulation happens, that might make the market more elastic as well. The second to last question is again coming back to market failures, and it's saying, using the information in the case study, identify one negative externality arising from building the sustainable urban extensions, and then it says explain why it's a negative externality. So the identification, or one of the identifications it does have, is the increase or the reduction or negative effect on the environment. So there's going to be damage to the environment. What you need to identify then is the external cost part of it and the third party. So the external cost there potentially is the reduce in house values from visual intrusion, and the third party are the people who are the current residents in those areas. The next question, similar kind of question, identify one positive externality arising from the building of the sustainable urban extensions and explain why it's a positive externality. So again, there was the example of economic growth, and again you would need what the external benefit was, and again who the third party is. So the external benefit of economic growth is the people who don't work, who aren't building it, so the people not buying houses or being involved in building it. It's the people whose businesses might benefit from the increase in sales from the people that are living in those areas. So the other third party in the external benefit of economic growth would be an increase in probably their standard of living from selling more goods and services. And last but not least, we've got to discuss whether subsidising the building of affordable new homes is the most effective solution to the housing shortage. So discuss, two-sided, subsidies being the main focus of this, affordable new homes being the target, is the most effective solution to the housing shortage. You want to analyse a subsidy to start with, similar to how you analysed the deregulation effects before. Potentially, again, you could evaluate it with inelastic demand as being subsidies being less effective. You could also talk about rising incomes of the country over time, and affordable homes may be necessities or inferior goods, probably necessities, whereas it may be that people are demanding luxury goods, so these subsidies don't actually get used, or they may be used but then that might not be the houses that are being required. On the positive side as well, you could also analyse it from a consumer surplus point of view. On the evaluation, the other policy they do mention is deregulation. Now, as the method they've chosen was to subsidise renovations and new homes, again, these would be specifically targeted. Deregulation would increase supply across the whole of the UK. So in the situation that they had, that's probably less effective than the targeted subsidies. But within that, you could talk about the relationship between the new and the renovation, and there being 9 times more homes that could be generated. So you could say it depends upon the type of subsidy and where they subsidise to get that. You could maybe also talk about where the money comes from, and potentially kind of that you could tax the building of non-affordable new homes in the private sector to help pay for this, and then it would also encourage businesses to take up these subsidies as well. So the hypothecation effect may help to make supply more elastic as well to achieve the target.